Hey, it's me, Riker. Today we're going to have a look at Awakened Heroes tier list and my predictions for current and future Awakened Heroes. So let's begin. I've taken all of the currently available Awakened Heroes and compared them side by side to one another. Now I've used a point-based system in order to rank them up and to see which hero will be the best hero in order to build. Now I've broken this point-based system into three categories, being appearance, PvE, player versus environment, and PvP, player versus player. Now these heroes will need to meet these specific requirements in order to be able to rank up in this tier list. So let's begin with the appearance category. Now this category is broken up into two subcategories, being animations and design. Each of them will award 2 points if they fulfill these requirements. Now appearance is a major component of Awakened Heroes. Essentially, this is one of the main reasons why these specific heroes are built, due to how they look and how they interact in battle. So for animations, this is broken up into how they interact with battle, what animations do they use, especially when they are fighting enemy heroes. So for example, when Awakened Brutus lands on the ground, he will cause a massive earthquake where the earth will shatter and rocks will fly in all directions. Then we have Awakened Solise over here, where she'll summon her little apparitions, where these two water elementals will follow around and heal your allies. And then we have Awakened Baden, where each time an enemy is controlled, a spear will appear across the whole screen where the enemies are being dealt damage. Now, this is extremely important. However, another aspect that needs to be considered is their ultimate animations. Now, we will have a look at them right now. Now, each of these ultimate animations are extremely well designed. Now, this ultimate animation shows an aspect of how they interact with the battle. So, what they do to the environment, such as Awaken Ezizh, creates a different dimension where all of these heroes are placed. Then we have Awaken Thane, where he starts teleporting and dashing around the entire screen. Then we have Brutus, where he essentially slams and groups all the enemies together. Then we have Solise, where she essentially submerges all the enemies with her water elemental. Then we have Awakened Baden and how he slashes the enemies with his spear. And then we have Awakened Belinda and how Belinda melts everyone with her fire emblem. Now, the reason I've given a 0 to Awakened Talene is due to the nerf in her ultimate animations. Now, we can also see I've given a 1 to Awakened Thane. The reason for this is because as he's teleporting around, you cannot see how he's interacting with the enemies, or how he changes the battlefield, or how he interacts with the enemies themselves, as he's essentially invisible each time he uses his ultimate skill. Now, you can only see this when he actually uses his ultimate, so he gets full energy, or you turn on ultimate animations. Now, the rest of the heroes have a 2 out of 2 for their respective animations, as you can vividly see what they are doing and how they're interacting with the battle. Now the next category over here, we have design, story, and lore. So this essentially describes how they look and what is the difference they have between their current version, being Awakened tier, and their normal version, and how does this interact with their abilities. So for example, Awakened Thane over here, he has these jagged edges with his sword, and this essentially shows how he slashes and dashes across the battlefield, one-shotting their enemies as he goes. And then we have another aspect called story and lore. So this is more about their short cinematic and how they interact with the character that they are paired up with. So for example, Awakened Talene with Asta, and we have a Brutus with Anasta, and Baden with Navanthi, and how all of these stories interact with each other and how they acquire their powers. So for example, how they got the Earth emblem for Brutus, how they got the Water emblem for Solise, and how they got their Fire emblem for Awakened Belinda. Now, each of these characters did extremely well in their respective categories for design, story, and lore. So next category over here, we have the next category we're going to have a look at is PvE. So we're going to begin with campaign. Now, I'm mainly looking for heroes who can provide a massive benefit to your team if you're fighting level 150 to 200 and above level deficits, as each of these heroes can be easily used at level deficits much lower than these specific numbers that I've mentioned. However, once you reach these numbers 200 and above, some of these heroes start to struggle. So let's have a look at Awakened Talene. Now, in some cases, Awakened Talene is extremely powerful, especially with her cheat death, where she can distract enemies and she can revive and keep on doing this multiple times throughout the duration of battle. In addition to this, she can also provide a bit of shielding and healing for your allies. So let's have a look at the next hero over here, Awaken Ezizh. Now, he is mainly used to essentially stun lock one specific enemy. However, I think this hero over here is going to fall off in this specific category, especially when Mulan is finally available to all players, as she provides a similar effect to Awaken Ezizh, where she can interrupt one enemy hero and keep them essentially stun locked for a couple of seconds while your allied heroes can start dealing damage to their enemies. Now, the other Awaken heroes for campaign do require a significant amount of investment, usually having their 30 signature item, 9 furniture, and 60 engravings in order to become effective. However, over time, when players are able to build all these respective heroes and test all of them, they will slowly be able to realize that these heroes can be extremely effective in campaign and especially at high level deficit push. Now, the next category over here is Factional Tower. Now, these heroes are used across the board in all of these respective areas, especially once you get into multi-stage factional tower fights, such as 3 or more, and you can use multiple awakened heroes per team. So you can have your, for example, your awakened Thane in the first team and your awakened Belinda in your second team. Now, these heroes, some of them provide a massive amount of burst damage, which they do, such as Awakened Thane and Awakened Belinda. Now, these heroes are being used more and more as more of them get released. So the next category over here, we have Abyssal Expedition. Now, because Abyssal Expedition allows you to focus on any hero, however, this hero needs to be part of a specific faction, such as tanks, supports, rangers, mages, and warriors. And some of these heroes currently available fall into these specific classes, such as Awakened Thane and Awakened Baden, who fall within the Ranger class. In addition to this, both of these heroes can do a massive amount of damage to the bosses and various other enemies scattered throughout the map. Now, some of these heroes also provide an additional support. However, for example, Awaken Ezizh is not that effective in Abyssal Expedition. However, Awaken Belinda, due to her burst damage, can be extremely effective in the amount of damage that she provides for your teammates. Now, I haven't included hunting fields in this specific tier list. The reason why is it is skewed towards a specific faction. So let's say you've chosen Lightbearers. Now you'll have an abundance to choose from, either Awakened Thane, Awakened Belinda, or you can choose both. However, from the other factions, you cannot choose multiple awakened heroes. And in some cases, some of these awakened heroes are much stronger when dealing with bosses, enemies, or simply being extremely powerful at their specific role. Now, the next area or subcategory that we're going to have a look at is Temporal Rift. Now, similar to Abyssal Expedition, where you can choose any of the 5 classes, such as tanks, supports, rangers, mages, and warriors, and you can select any faction that you so choose. So let's say you want to use a combination of tanks, supports, and rangers. You can choose from a wide variety of awakened heroes to help you progress through this specific event. Now, all of these heroes are extremely effective in this specific game mode. However, the one hero that seems to struggle is Awakened Ezizh. The reason why is because he struggles to inflict his control effect on the enemy hero, and his damage is not that significant when compared to other awakened heroes that you can bring along in the fight. Now, the next category we're going to have a look at is Cursed Realm. Now, this is once again a weekly rotation of different bosses and enemies, and we can see a pattern where some of these heroes are slowly starting to get used in every single boss team or multi-stage fight in this specific event. Now, because it has multiple teams that you can build for the specific event, it might require a couple of awakened heroes in order to do this specific event. So we can see that awakened Talene, Thane, Brutus, Solise, Baden, and Belinda are slowly starting to become extremely important in this specific event. Now, some of them provide either a support based role, and others provide a more damage based role. So, the support role might be either through the primary and secondary stats that they might provide, or when you are fighting against a specific debuff where healing is significantly reduced and shields are buffed. This might allow Awakened Talene to be a major play a major role in buffing your allies and providing a shield so they can survive as long as possible. Now, once again, Awakened Ezizh struggles in this specific game mode because this game mode has a duration of 1 minute and 30 seconds, and he struggles to deal damage and provide any other important buffs for your allies. So, from the PvP or player versus player category, we have Arena. Now, from Arena, this is a daily event where you can mix and match your heroes in order to counter your enemies, teams, and heroes. However, from Arena, you can only use one team in order to counter your enemy's heroes. So usually you would like to use the best possible PvP team in order to defeat your opponent's heroes. So as we can see, Brutus is currently number one in this specific aspect, as this is part of the strongest PvP team, being Awakened Brutus, followed by the Dimensional Stack consisting of Ezio, Albedo, Joan of Arc, and Merlin. Now, once we reach the Challenges and Legends Challenge Arena, where there are multiple teams available, we can see more Awakened heroes appearing in this lineup. So we can see Awakened Thane, who has become extremely prominent in this specific battle, Awakened Brutus, Awakened Solise, and Awakened Baden. Now, these heroes are extremely effective. However, this is only 3 teams that are currently in the Challenges Arena. However, in Legends Challenger Arena, when you want that extra edge over your opponent, we see even a greater variety of the types of heroes being used in this specific game mode, in both Awakened Talene, Thane, Brutus, Solise, Baden, and Belinda. Now, each of these provide a massive effect in terms of their damage, support, or their realm-wide effect. Now, this is usually one of the reasons why they are used, because of their realm-wide effect, which essentially affects all of your allied heroes. And the next aspect that we have is Heroes of Esperia. Now, this is once again a recurring game mode. However, it occurs over a longer duration and is not as frequent as, for example, Treasure Scramble. However, because there are multiple teams required and you get different amount of teams depending on which rank you are, such as diamond, silver, gold, and so on, this will affect the amount of awakened heroes that can be used. However, recently we have not had a Heroes of Esperia, so therefore it is too early to judge into how effective Awakened Belinda might be. And the last and final category is Treasure Scramble. Now, similar to Cursed Realm, this is a weekly event. However, there are buffs and debuffs that apply to this event, which might benefit certain heroes. So when the debuff or buff is a buff direct damage or single target damage focused, then heroes such as Awakened Thane, Brutus, and Awakened Baden will do extremely well. However, when this specific buff focuses on energy regen and ultimate abilities, then heroes such as Awakened Solise and Awakened Belinda will do extremely well in these specific events. Now, as we can see from the specific tier list, we can see that Awakened Brutus is the most effective or most powerful hero currently available from the Awakened heroes. However, there are a couple of heroes close in second, such as Awakened Solise, and Awakened Baden. These three heroes are currently the most popular and the most powerful awakened heroes currently available. Then we have Awakened Thane and Awakened Belinda coming up as well. Now, I think Awakened Thane over time will slowly start falling off in terms of PvE. However, in PvP, he will be extremely powerful at dealing with enemies. Now, Awakened Belinda will be extremely versatile as she can deal a massive amount of damage if she can acquire the energy required to use her ultimate. So I would see that she increases her position in terms of her PvE contribution to the various areas such as Campaign, Faction Tower, Abyssal, Temporal Rift, and Cursed Realm. However, in PvP, I think she might fall off because her damage might not necessarily be sufficient in order to compete with the other damage dealers currently available.